We are live. Thank you everybody for tuning in today for this week's Water Cooler Wednesday with Tina Clements. This is insanely exciting for two reasons. One, the topic is just absolutely great as we get into this victim mindset, this victim mentality sort of topic, which is just such a good topic. And there is nobody I'd rather be talking about this or anything else with than Tina. She is so dynamic, and I'm not going to build her up because you're about to see for yourself. So, but thank you for all of you tuning in on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and we may or may not be on Twitter. I pressed a button where we might be. So, hi, Twitter. If so, send us some hate and we'll know we're on Twitter. That's what happens on Twitter. So before we begin, I wanted to give a quick disclaimer, being that we're going to be talking about a sensitive topic in terms of a victim mindset or mentality, and that is that if you believe that you are suffering from a victim complex or somebody you love is, the best practice is always to go seek professional help. While we can be professional help, we're not clinical therapists or psychologists. So with that being said, we're going to tell you our thoughts on this. And Tina is the perfect person to do this. Tina is high energy, hands-on keynote speaker. What's a hands-on keynote speaker?
We'll get to that.
Okay, good. I want to know. Is there something I've been missing out on? Like, maybe I should be a hands-on author, coach, facilitator, entrepreneur.com contributor, and successful leader. That's quite a resume. Before launching the BMW Group joint venture, the retail performance company, in 2013, Tina worked for 10 plus years within BMW NA organization and has been in the learning and development industry since 1996. Throughout her career, she has held leadership positions such as Vice President, Operations Manager, and Training Manager. This is so impressive. Believing that a company's success is directly related to the engagement of its people, she excels at moving businesses forward and motivating and growing talent. This part, I think, is really cool. Some of the organizations that Tina has worked with: HBO, Verizon, CoverGirl, Rolls-Royce, BMW, IBM, and I can't even tell you what a fan I am of HBO and CoverGirl, or Rolls-Royce and BMW, maybe more. Always challenging herself to improve and grow. She's earned her CPC, ELIMP accreditations, among others, such as DISC, MBTI, Langevin. What's Langevin? I don't even know that one. Her clients confirm she's a communications expert, and her books, go out and get her books, The Art of Facilitation and Fantastic Facilitation Fails, are a testament to her talent. So no pressure, but now you just got to live up to all of that.
And that's the show, everyone. Yeah. Thanks for joining. And we'll talk to you soon. All right. Peace out.
Yeah. And Michael knows you. He says that you're always fun and informative. That's good. So let's get into that fun and information. Tina, why this topic? Why a victim mindset? There's got to be a story behind that.
There's always a story, my friend. There's a story behind everything, and if we run out of stories, then we're done, right? Because within the story is the lesson. Of course, there's a story. Understanding this topic, I learned in a painful way and by accident. And when I launched the retail performance company, which is a BMW 50-50 joint venture, 8.5 years ago. So I learned it by accident. I learned it again through the story and through, unfortunately, experiential pain, which is why, David, I love to discuss it as a topic, because it changed my life. It changed my life without question for the better. It changed me as a leader. It changed me as a mother, and it changed my relationship with my friends and family. So just knowing that there is such a thing as a victim state, a victim mentality, and most importantly, knowing that that state is a choice, again, shifted my shifted my entire path in life. Do you need me to tell the story, David? Is that what
I
you were?
need it with an intro like that. We need to know when was Tina a victim or a victim of a victim? What? Yeah, we need to hear this.
You knew that audience, right? That was his passive aggressive way of just Tina, tell me. So to be frank, victim mentality really is coming from failure. And I have failed in my career many times, so phenomenal amount of times. And I have failed famously and just gorgeously. And one of the stories, and the one I'll share with you now is when I launched RPC. So I was working with the BMW of North America Group in human resources. I was the face of, hi Juanita, I was the face of performance management for the entire 2000-esque national group. Loved my job. At that point, I got the tap on the shoulder from my boss who said, hey, BMW is launching this new consultancy. It supports human resources, training, coaching, learning and development, creative services. Do you want to create it and lead it here in the United States? David, the question mark was still hanging in the air. And I said, yes, because I am ready, fire, aim. I don't always think things through. Let's go. So after the adulation and the excitement of saying yes, then the reality set in that I needed to launch a company. And I realized I had no idea what I was doing. And the failure began. But I didn't really have the chance to to really worry or feel any nervousness because in a week and a half, 10 days, I had to be on a plane flying to Munich to propose and present the US's strategy for this company that yet did not exist, that didn't even have an LLC. So I Googled how to build a business plan because I didn't even really know what that was about. And I put it together and I was still nervous and went overseas and I pitched the idea. And I'm meeting everyone for the first time, and the pressure of launching something new owned by BMW hit me as I am speaking to the board. And clickety clack, and at the end of this beautiful, organized, gorgeous PowerPoint, I said, "Gentlemen, wouldn't you agree that this is the right strategy for the United States?" And I got hit with a huge 9. No,
wow.
No positive, no support whatsoever. And what I remember is the CFO at the time looked at my boss. We'll call my boss Wolfgang right now, for lack of a better. So he looked at Wolfie and said nothing, but his look to me said, "What were you thinking? What were you thinking hiring this guy?" Now, I have no idea if any of that really transpired, but in that moment, I said, "You're right. Wolfie, what were you thinking?" I leaned into the noise, that victim voice in my head, that inner critic that said, "You're too stupid to do this," which has been my chosen, not to be so transparent, but that was the platform for which I have lived on in my career. You're too stupid to do this. And I really believed that. And so the rest of the trip was a little bit challenging. Got back on the plane, went back overseas. On my plane ride back, the victim state shifted into anger state. They set me up to fail. They didn't give me any direction. Even during the presentation, I asked for their guidance and they said, "You're the American, you should know." And what I didn't realize at that time is that they were terrified also. They were in that victim state. So as I flew back, I actually got to the point where I decided to leave. I had this epiphany. I don't have to stay here and do this. I'm too stupid. I'm out. So I called Wolfie. This is about 2 weeks into the job now. I called Wolfie and I said, "Wouldn't you agree that me moving back is the ideal idea? And I actually have some ideas on who can take my place." And he, God bless his soul, it was a Friday afternoon. He said, "Yeah, Tina, no, you will be okay after the weekend. You enjoy, and I talk to you on Monday. Bye-bye," which was a horrible German accent. So to all my German friends and family, I really apologize.
I thought it was great.
But he said no. So he took my choice to leave off the table unknowingly. And so I, in that moment, went, well, I have to make a new choice. Now, none of that was conscious, but I said, I have to choose to be successful. And the next Monday, so we talked on Monday, I shifted and I tried something new. a matter of fact, I called the bank and I got us set up with a very tiny step, but it was movement in the right direction. And then I talked to somebody and I tried to sell a product that I was making, et cetera, et cetera. And then a year later we were successful. But it was in that, so that was a very long-winded story to tell you that it was just this colossal, thank God, short-term failure that was actually me. It was all of the choices that I was making, and I was swimming in victim so much that my fingers were pruny until the choice was taken away, and then I can shift, pivot, and then make a new choice and elevate up and out. So there's one story. We'll come back another time. I'll tell you the rest of my stories.
No, I absolutely love that. And it ties so directly into our topic that we spoke with Robin Knox about last week, about imposter syndrome. And here you are, not just suffering from the imposter syndrome, but then you get a pretty decent confirmation that you're an imposter, the way everyone's looking at you. And so you go to this point where you're trying to blame others. And I wonder how that lives along with the insecurity within you. So on one hand, the imposter syndrome is like, I'm not good enough. But then it takes some sort of gumption to then say, and that's your fault. It almost seems contradictory in a way. Can you speak to that? What is that? How does that live within you?
You know, and again, I'm no therapist. That is for sure. There is a process to what you're saying, imposter syndrome and the victim state, which is it all starts with thought. So I'm going to break this down in the most simple way. And I will get pushback, and that's okay. Bring it on, because I pushed back on this because I was swimming around in victim mode. It's all thought. So if you believe, if you're in that moment and your ASR, what is that? Your resonating thoughts are, I'm too stupid, I'm too stupid, I'm too stupid. You're going to find confirmation out there in the universe, and then you swim in that victim state. So when you have a thought and you can then shift it and say, no, I don't know what I'm doing, but that's okay. In that moment, I am smart. I'll find someone who does. That's okay, right? So you shift the thought, I am smart. What happens is the result is a new feeling. See, the feelings don't come first. The feelings come second. So you have that first thought, which you can control. That's what we either push back against or don't believe, or no one has really taught us this, but we can control that thought. It usually comes in the form of shifting your perspective, which I had to do. So I shifted and I said, okay, I'm going to make this work. So I'm going to try something new. And I had that new thought, which then made me feel, okay, maybe this can work, which made me take action. So there's your process. You have the thought, which results in a feeling, and that feeling has you take action. If anyone has a teenager, they know you can't walk up to them at 12 noon on a Saturday and say, get out of bed, and expect them to get out of the bed, because they're just like, shut up, mom. Right? So you can't make someone do something. It's called free will. We cannot control free will. A human being has to want to change.
Yeah.
They have to come up with the feeling, and the feeling comes from thought first. So, and that's where, for us, that's where a good coach comes in. Not to tell somebody, like a consultant can come in and say, here's what I think you should do, finger pointed, go do it, because I'm educated, experienced, and smart. And that's great. But if the person doesn't have the feeling around it and doesn't have the thought attached to that action, it's never going to get done. Right. So that's regardless of what we're calling it, imposter syndrome, victim state, it all starts with the thought, having that new thought.
Yeah. And in a way, for you, it almost seemed like there was pressure, when you were told, nope, you just have to take the weekend, and sort of like this, if you stepped outside of this and left, I mean, how would you look then? So there's this added sort of pressure to it. But I want to interject with this question right here. How do you know? I love this question. It reminds me of something that happened just this morning with my son. How do you know if you're making yourself the victim or if you're actually the victim? And if I could interject into that, this morning, I said, my son was like, he's a teenager, and he was snapping at everybody. And I said, dude, what are you doing? Are you having a bad day? And he said, yeah, because Addie, his younger sister, did this, and this. And I said, hold on. You can't let Addie dictate your day. You should never let anybody dictate your day. What does somebody else's action have to do with your mood? And he looked at me like I was a complete idiot. And he said,
Yeah.
Dad, every bad day starts because of somebody else's action. And I wasn't sure if that's true or not. But it's but somebody having that control over you is kind of a scary thought. So doesn't matter if you're the victim and or not, to have that victim mentality or not. And like Juanita said, how do you know if you're making yourself the victim or if you're actually a victim?
There's a lot to unpack there. First, I think your son should be in this show. That was a very mature thought from a teenager, right? So, however, I understand his perspective. It's skewed. We've been taught somebody else's actions can control, but can they? They cannot. I say this to my 11-year-old all the time, to the point where she now goes, I know, Mom, nobody else can control how you feel. Right. And I'm like, because I'm right? So you get to choose your feeling, but it's all based on thought. So let's pretend you're driving to work, you get cut off in traffic, which has happened to every single one of us. And how do we react to that? And your son reacted. He did not respond, he reacted. So we get cut off in traffic, and at first and you fill in the blank and whatever you're going to do. And of course, that's immediate physical brain-body connection, physical reaction. And then there's the choice, it's scream, whatever it is. So can we, and there are 5 choices. So every time your son, you as a driver, in any situation, we hit the obstacle, there's always 5 choices. So in that moment, we are screaming and angry, and we're in victim state, blame game state. We can stop and change our perspective. Shifting is a choice. Is it easy? No, ladies and gentlemen. No, absolutely. We're human beings. We're flesh and blood and messy. So what I am saying is hard as hell. However, we do have the choice to stop and go, okay, maybe that guy was late for an interview and he's been out of work for 18 months. Maybe she is in labor and she's trying to get to the hospital. Maybe, right? To just shift in that moment, then you'll have a new thought. You will have a physical reaction like that, but you'll also take a new action. So in that moment with your son, what a great example, by the way, and a teenager, no less, who has almost no control over their emotions and everything, right? Yeah. To stop and say, and this is a mature ask of a teenager specifically, but to stop and say, okay, the immature actions of my little sister is so annoying, which it is, of course it is. The first thing we can do as parents, quite frankly, is to acknowledge and validate. Also hard as parents or as leaders with your people. Say, yeah, that must be really frustrating when you're exhausted and you haven't even had your breakfast yet, and now you've got this person in your mind. You have every right to feel frustrated. Notice I didn't agree. I'm validating and acknowledging. 2 skill sets that took me a century, half a century, whatever it is, to learn. So I guarantee so that person was not a victim. Your son is not truly, by definition, a victim. Is there a force that is making negative happen to him? I mean, I guess you could argue, but really it's a victim state. It's a victim mentality, right? So in that state, to stop and sometimes we need to do it for ourselves. Okay, I'm pissed off at my sister. I'm frustrated. Whatever the feeling is, and it's coming from this. Let's shift for a second. Maybe she didn't get any sleep. You know what? She just wants to be around me because she loves me and I'm her big brother and I'm her safe. So shift. Okay. Hi, little sister. Yes. Yep. I love you too. Can you give me some space, please? And then you take a new action.
Right. So that perspective taking. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So, and then back to the very specific question that Juanita asked, so we use the example of Malala, for whom needs no last name,
right?
Who was by definition a victim all those years ago, where she was fighting for girls' education, and she was a massive advocate, and she was on a bus, and a man got on a bus and said, "Where is Malala?" And she got shot in the face. as a result of her. But she was a victim by definition. She had a choice. She chose to accept and forgive. And she could have stopped, well, shift her perspective first around the situation. She accepted, forgave, and then decided to change the world by continue, right? So it's a dramatic example, but it also is an ideal example of
Beautiful.
someone who was swimming in that victim state, rightfully so. No one could argue that she didn't have the right to. She could be in a victim state right now and in the blame game, and I would say, you've earned it. Stay there as long as you want to. But she chose to shift, elevate, and ultimately change the world.
I love it. And that clearly takes this amount of courage. But her doing that, and on a smaller scale, when we're able to take control and take personal responsibility and move forward, it's so empowering. Why then do we sort of default often to the other side of that? Like, what benefit is there to be a victim?
It's safe. It's so counterintuitive when I say what I'm about to say. When we try, there's the potential to fail. And who wants to fail? So in my story, when I decided to resign that fateful day, I couldn't fail, because if I left and quit and resigned, I would never get the chance to fail. So I was playing it safe. And if I play it safe, I won't feel pain. I won't have people, in my case, have the chitter chatter that Tina's a failure in my very small, confined BMW-esque family space, right? So when you stay in that victim state, it's comfortable, you know it, it's safe. And I have to tell a quick story. Years ago, I have a very good friend who complained about being single all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know any of this language at that point. I was young and a dum-dum. Some would argue continually still am, but very much so. And I couldn't take it anymore, because what she was doing while she was complaining was sitting home on her couch with her big yellow blanket while so she was without question swimming in victim mode. And I screamed and I said, do you think he's going to come through the chimney? If you want to meet him, get off the couch. So that was at the time, right, my nice way of saying, let's shift our perspective around this, accept your state, and then do you want to make change? Let's get you out and go to a bar or whatever.
I love it.
Right? But she was safe, literally, figuratively, right? She was warm and cozy on her couch, playing it safe, and it was comfortable, and to just continue to complain about it. That was the environment that she knew. So that's really the reason why we stay. And again, victim, that was a bad choice of word, but I have swum in that victim state myself, which is why you can't unknow what I'm telling you right now. And I say that to myself all the time. And sometimes you just need to swim in it. And there have been nights, especially during the pandemic, where it was late at night, and I have said out loud to nobody but myself, I'm going to allow myself the evening to be a victim. I'm going to Netflix my brains out and eat ice cream out of this tub. And that's what we're going to do. But I'm aware of it because I can't unknow it. And on Tuesday, I will shift my perspective. But right now, I need to swim around in this victim. And let yourself be there. We're not perfect. We're not bionic. We can't always be, I'm going to change my perspective. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be there, forgive, and then decide when we want to elevate up and out. Because it's the only way to find success, really, right, is once you decide it's time to shift and get out.
Yeah. And it's so powerful bringing in that example of the pandemic, because there's got to be this layer in here of when I can see a direct reaction after my action, right? I take an action and the universe is supposed to react in a certain way that feels empowering. I feel like I am impacting the world and the world is responding the way it should. And so it's very empowering. But learned helplessness kicks in when we don't see our hand in our own fate. There was that controversial experiment done within positive psychology, which is kind of interesting, but with dogs, that they would randomly shock one group of dogs, and the other group of dogs were shocked every time they got on a certain spot or touched something within their kennel. And the dogs where the shocks were coming randomly became completely helpless and depressed because they didn't see any rhyme or reason for it. So I guess when the world starts spinning out of control and out of your control, more precisely, whether it is the world right now during COVID or your world, like having all these tasks in front of you to launch your own company and present the business plan, and you have no control, nobody's there to help you. Is that like it? Is that what's going to get you there? Or is that a piece of it? How does that fit into everything? This sort of learned helplessness that we don't have a control over our own our own lives.
If I'm understanding your question, control, who doesn't want to be in control, right? We I don't know many of us. Now, there are a few adventure lovers who love the crazy roller coasters and they're out of control, that kind of a thing. But in general, as human beings, we like to be able to control everything that we can control. Some of the population more than others. I'm sure that you know a few people, everyone is thinking of either themselves or that one person who just needs to be in control. And this is where these 5 choices, and I just realized I haven't shared what the 5 choices are, but I will now. Knowing that you have a choice helps with that loss of control. And I will tell you that 8 years ago when we launched our PC, my hand was in everything, every train the trainer, every facilitation, every hire, every HR, front, back, center, everything. And what I realized, I was white knuckling the company. Now, in the beginning, there was reason for it, and one would argue I had no choice or whatever the thing is. But as time went, we had a team of leaders, and it took me a while to release. And what I was swimming in victim mode around how I was leading. And what I had to do was shift my perspective and say, they were hired for a reason. Will they do everything the way I need them to? No, of course not. But that's why I hired them. And I trust them, and they're so unbelievably talented. Let them go. And it took me a while to accept, shift my perspective, and ultimately change my own behavior, which neuronically, I don't know, David, if that's a word, ultimately me, we're going to make it up because I'm not a doctor of anything, so I get to say words, and they we'll have my own definition later. Yes. So, but neurons, right, are created when you have the same pattern of thought over and over and over again. It's like a wheelbarrow when you're gardening in that trench, right? You just get to, and so the more I kept thinking positively around this particular part of my leadership style, the more accepting and now I'm pointing over here to this other building. The team this week is over there leading a whole incredibly massive experience that we have, a training event. I actually think they're happy that I have not shown up at all. I'm sure that they are, right? And I went, go, you've got this. If you need me, I can almost see you. And it took me years, however, to get to that point where I can go like that and shift my perspective. And that doesn't mean I don't have the feelings. So I acknowledge and validate and shift. So control has so much to do with this and what we're talking about. And so what are the 5 choices?
Yeah, I was not going to let you get away with that again.
So thanks everyone for joining. Good luck with finding out what they were.
If you want to know all 5, you got to buy the book. That's
exactly right. Coming next year because my publisher keeps telling me hurry up.
The pending title is Neuronic.
That's book 4. That's the next one. So the 5 choices. The first one, we'll go through what we've been talking about, is to choose to remain a victim to it, which is actually a choice. The other 4 are, number 1, to accept it as it is, forgive, and move on. Now, that sounds so simple, but how many of us know someone to whom you've walked up to and said, hey, this person's coming back into town. Remember the thing that happened? Oh, yes, but I'm fine. I'm totally fine. And you know darn well that person is not acceptance truly means when a topic comes up, you go, oh yeah, that happened. and you just move on.
Don't
It
have that
doesn't live right here.
emotional connection to it anymore. The same.
Exactly. There's no resurgence of that kinetic, right? Your cellular response. So to accept it is one. Two, to shift your perspective around it, which arguably is the most critical and most challenging because it leads to the other choices. So to actually stop and say, what's going on for that person? What is going on for me? What is the situation? And shift your perspective. Now, I've said it before, but it bears repeating. Not easy. It's hard as can be. Been there, and I have struggled with personal things. It's taken me a year. And again, I know all these things, and I'll stop and get so angry with myself because I know it's just a mind shift, but it's very hard. We're human beings. So shifting is three, excuse me. Four would be to change it, to actually take action to change it. And then five, which was my favorite, to leave it.
Yeah.
That's potential. Always caution specifically any client I have who is a coaching client of mine, that leaving it is always a choice. However, are you running from or are you running to? Wherever you go, there you are. If you're running from something, whatever the thing is that's happening here, it's going to probably follow you to wherever you're going. But if you're leaving to go to something, then excellent. And I was a perfect example. I was running from. I was not running to anything. I allowed my fear and my noise to keep me small. So that's why I was choosing to leave. And in my story, I ultimately shifted my perspective, accepted my reality, and then went down the path of changing it. But in my story, no argument, I had all five choices on the table at some point until ultimately I found success. So again, now, one last thing, it's not necessarily about the choice, even though I keep harping on choices. It's about the consequence that drives the choice. And that's where we go emotionally. We say, and most likely subconsciously, if I leave, then I will have no salary and I can't do that. And whatever the thing is, I won't work for Rolls Royce, and so I won't have that credo, that credential, that whatever the thing is. So it's always about we are thinking about the consequence, and that ultimately is going to drive one of the five choices.
Right. Well, those of us who aren't the teenagers are thinking about the consequences.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
I love the five, and right, I would caution against the running from that avoidance. Because you're always going to be the same you. So when you run from your problems, but you are your problem, you never really escape them. So when you're telling your story, you make it sound simple because it's like, yeah, I got a call and I was told I'm not going, and I'm there. Okay, cool, right? And you even said earlier, like, oh, it's as simple as a mind shift. There's nothing simple about a mind shift, right? So what happens? How does somebody go about pulling themselves out of this? And then maybe part B of that, if I have an employee or a loved one or somebody that I care about, who is very much in that victim mindset, how do I pull them out? Because in my experiences, when you go out and you start talking to them and trying to help them shift, every answer comes back to a negative answer, right? There's always another reason why they can't, or why they've been wrong. How do you pull yourself out from that? And then how can you help somebody else pull out of that?
This is why I am a coach, but I don't coach, because you cannot coach the uncoachable.
Right.
So to answer the second part of that question first, when we cannot pull someone out, we cannot truly tell someone how to feel, how to think, what to do, and then expect, bink, oh, they're fixed, they're healed, we can move on. That human has to want to. So all we can do as coaches, parents, leaders, etc., is to define the why, which is their consequence potentially, and then create an environment where that person can thrive, And very specifically, ask that person the questions that they are not asking themselves. For others, that's about it. That's what we can do. Now, I'm sure if someone's listening who is much more intelligent, and you, my friend, who has so many more credentials and experience, please chime in. However, we can't put, it's the teenager. I can't put a finger in that person's face and say, feel something different. Change now. You're going to get the fight or flight most of the time.
Right. I try that daily with my son. That's absolutely
and
true. It doesn't
me,
work.
just a few hours ago with my 11-year-old, and that the fact, okay, and that, again, that's our fourth podcast, right, my friend? So, but it's about asking the questions and and starting with the why. So, as an example, this also comes down to the feedback conversation, performance feedback, for which is another topic that I love to talk about because it's so critical. And to pull someone in and say, "Hey, got a second? So, are you open to a little feedback? Here's what you're doing well, but may I ask you, how did you think that thing went? Well, no, right? The whole thing." And then stop and say, okay, the reason I'm talking to you about it is because I see a lot of potential in you. And I see that you could be great here, or whatever the platform is. And then say, but here's what I see. XYZ, explain. I want you to be great. So if you're not just walking in guns a-blaring, saying you're not good enough, you should change. You're saying, I want to support you. I think that you can be whatever you want to be, or fill in the blank, what the need is. Let me ask you a question. How's it working out for you to act like that? That's one of my favorite questions to ask. How's it working out for you?
Yeah.
When you get the, yeah, but, you know, someone is swimming around in victim mode when they start, yeah, but, and you do this great job. You give them all of your mentorship and your advice and all the things, and you get this. And you give them more and you get this, and you get them more and you get this. And quite frankly, I have pulled out you're not ready to be helped. So Mary, I think you're amazing, but you're not there. When you're ready to change, what are you talking about? No, I'm ready. I said, you're not. Let me tell you the words that you use. Use but 4 times. And you have to put the mirror back up to that person's face. I love you. I want to help you. That's my job. I'm here to support you, but I can only do so much. And I'm totally getting tangential, my friend. I'm going down a different path, but my HR hat is on right now. For any leaders out there who need to make the intangible tangible when it comes to measuring performance, but it's measurable. That victim state, and I'll be honest with you, I have terminated people on behalf of companies who performance, they were kind of meeting targets, but their inability to perform attitudinally was detracting from the entire organization. Therefore, and they were, we did the right thing with a performance improvement plan and communicated effectively what the expectations are, but they were swimming around so heavily in victim state, and we did everything we could to allow that person to make a different choice. They chose not to, till ultimately we had to let them go. So again, the intangible can become tangible measurables, because that's important in human resources and performance reviews. When it comes to this victim mentality, it just is a matter of how it's scripted and communicated and whatnot. I'm sorry, David. I just went in 15 different directions.
No, don't apologize for that. That's dead
I warned you.
And the thing is, from when you're talking about the HR hat and what's measurable, I would think that with the victim mentality, it's so emotional and biased and not fully rational that all the other things, like documenting things, both things that need to be worked on and things that are working well and that they're doing well, and bringing up that evidence might help. I know that I had a client who there was a huge challenge here. Their manager really wasn't performing. And you can tell I'm being careful with how I talk about this on every social media platform. But their manager wasn't really performing. And so I was in there trying to figure out what's the missing piece here, what's happening, what's not working. And what I found was every issue was somebody else's, and not typically their employees either, because they were hiring and training those employees. So every issue was something external, to the extent of blaming customers for their consequences or whatnot. It was mind blowing. And spending time with this individual, it became very clear that this to me looked like it was this that the victim mindset is sort of wrapped up in this insecurity that is then dressed up as this major confidence. And so it's these layers that you sort of have to pull back. So I love your advice on what you're talking about is almost making it a safe place when you're talking to them and not coming in attacking. So is that something that organizations can do? Is that like psychological safety and that sort of mentality? How much does that play into it if I'm looking to build an organization that doesn't foster this sort of mentality?
Okay. Again, so much to unpack.
I know, sorry. It's my ADD.
No,
I'm like,
David, what a phenomenal example, because this, what you just defined, is the deterioration of companies and families. And that person that you're defining, I have the shivers right now because I have worked with that person a few times, and I know one incredibly well who ultimately quit the organization, and the organization threw a party because think about first how exhausted that person must be at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They're using all their power for evil instead of good. They're putting so much attention and energy into defending why they won't, and in the blame game, and swimming around in that victim state, that they don't have time or space for anything else. So but that's the skills. That's what they've learned for whatever reason. He or she, that's how they're showing up.
Right. And if I could just interject this one thing, it begs the question, which I straight up asked this individual. If nothing is in your control, then what exactly does the manager do? What is the job? Because if nothing's in your control, why are the clients wasting their money paying your salary? I might have said it a little bit more sensitively than that, but
I almost hope you didn't, because there's at some point, and offline, I want to know everything about this story, by the way, because I'm so intrigued. And I think as a leader, this might be one of the most frustrating humans. And certainly as a coach, this is where I say you can't coach the uncoachable, where I throw up my hands because I just want to fix you. I am aware that is a limitation I have, which is why I don't deploy myself that's why I have experts and my people who go, and they're phenomenal coaches, right? So because I just want to, same thing. I just want to be like, think, and Tabitha, you're fixed, done. And so with this kind of human, you did exactly what you were left with, which is mirror up to the face. I honestly think a little bit more of a strong hand is taken. And this is where you stop the person and say, so I just want to show you my piece of paper. You use the word but 46 times during this conversation. I love the question that you posed. So what do you do? Because and just call it out. I mean, and I'm not saying be mean as a leader or say, my job is to help you get to the next level. That's my job as your boss, and to help you grow. Sometimes the next level is out of the company, which is okay also, but that's my whole responsibility. I'm failing you because all I'm hearing from you is defensiveness and reasons why you can't. So, and I love your question. So what do you do? What exactly do you do? And then this is where we come back to that conversation around being able to make their actions tangible. So John, here's what we're going to do going forward, because you right now are actually not meeting the expectations of your role or this company. If you remember, the mission statement of this company is blah, 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 and the values are X, Y, and Z. So do you think that you're trustworthy? No, because you're not doing your job. So you're not meeting. Wouldn't you agree with that? Well, but everything, you should look at my paper. There isn't one thing that you said. So what we need to do together right now is define what your role is as a leader. And then you do that with that person. And I'm not, again, this is where the hard comes in, or anyone would do it. And this is why companies fail, because leaders don't step up and have this hard conflict conversation. They avoid it like the plague because it's hard. It's terrifying. Some leaders want to be the friend of that person. Some leaders agree with him or her. Right. And so and then that's a whole different issue as well. Right. But it's
or they're aggressive and they enter the conversation emotionally, which is a bad pair for the person who's already only seeing things emotionally.
My time in human resources was the best work, and I fell into that career. I was in learning and development and training, and I got to, right. So I just fell into it. And the beginning was very hard because I too was emotionally attached to my colleagues and friends and had to quickly shift and not be in their story. And that was super hard, really, really super hard. I learned for my own sanity and safety
Yeah.
that I had to get out. And then, of course, as I matured and learned and practiced the language and what to ask and how to say certain things, then we could get there together. But you can't be emotionally attached to the outcome. That's not. If you want to get terminated, that's your desire. Then keep going down that path. But it's my job to put the light up to your face, the as I see Michael.
Sorry.
Hi, Michael. The mirror up to your face. This is what you're deploying. That's my job in a respectful way, not a finger in your face. You better shape up or you're going to. This is it. Do you want to be here? Can I help you stay? Can I help you be successful? We have 6 months to flip the ship. Are you in or you out? And that's it. And with a person like that too, David, that's the question at the end. Are you in or you out? Right. Your choice. You want to, and this is infrequent, but I've done the 5 choices with people. So this is where you are. Tell me when you're ready to shift. I've asked that question of a couple of clients in the past as well. How long do you want me to let you swim in victim? What? Well, 1 more week. All right, good. So we'll meet on Monday the 17th, and that's a week from now. You ready? Okay, that's great. And then all right. I ate my bonbons and I watched the reruns of Friends, and now I'm back to work. Right. Just whatever the thing is.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're forcing a choice from them, and you're not able to get in their head and change the way they think necessarily. But if you can change their behavior, then their thoughts will change. So like banning people talking about anything that's external. So in this case, I set down the rules. Any meeting, we were not talking about anything that's outside of our control because that's a waste of time. So anything that's brought up in a meeting is within our control, and that means we could talk about solutions. Right. And then once people start doing that, then they start seeing an avenue for that. So right. I distract you with Michael, but I think that's a great, sorry for welcoming you into my world of ADHD. This is how my brain works. There's like 14 things happening. This is a visual representation of it with Michael here, like popping in. So Michael's question, are team members or managers / leaders harder to get out of the victim mode? I think that's a really interesting question.
Yes. That being my answer. It's so experientially, I have found that leaders are challenging, but that is also because I work more with leaders than I have with team members. But it really depends. It really depends. Humans are humans. Leaders are team members or whatever it is. Usually when there's a big team, if you give them too much space to create their own story because you are not leaning in, because you as a leader are swimming in victim mode, they in turn start to swim in their own victim mode. And I'm sure you've seen the picture of the boat and that statistic. Whenever there's change or anything that's going on in a company, there's that top 10% that's phenomenal. And they're the ones raising their hands for new training and everything. And then you've got the middle, the wind catchers. And then you've got the bottom 10, 15% that want to suck down the boat. No matter what you do or say, your responsibility is to communicate with these wind catchers right here. And they will most likely follow the bottom of the boat because it's easier. Again, it's safer there, and they're louder. They're always so much louder than these positive folks who are pulling up at the top. So if I had to choose with whom I needed to work in a company, I want to make sure that the leaders have the ideal mindset and know this language, because then it will trickle down. That's arguable. So really, to answer the question specifically, it's equal, I think, in my experience. Humans are humans, but I see it more within leadership state. But again, that's who I'm working with them quite a bit.
Yeah. And how frequently do we see leaders with a victim mindset feeling and expressing that they are victims to their employees? But we see it the other way too. And so there's this tribalism between employees and managers. And almost as a group, we play this game.
Yep. Exactly. Ping pong, right? Back and forth. Why should I change? He's not changing. She's not changing. So, again, I hate to say it's like it's parental, but if it's the behavior that my mom is wielding, right? If that's the sword she's with, then why shouldn't I be the exact same way and show up the exact same way, right?
Right.
You're accurate. You're 100% accurate.
So we're at 10 till 1 now. So on the East Coast. So we probably have to
Are
start
we
saying
really?
goodbye, which is
Wow.
I know. Well, we said beforehand this could go for hours. So
Yes.
we are definitely having you back because like we've just scratched the surface. I don't think we've even heard your entire, origin story. And so I want to dive deeper in that and hear more about that and the wisdom that you're bringing to this has been really, really invaluable. Right, focus on problems, focus on solutions, not problems. That's very wise too. So Tina, tell us how we could get in touch with you. I'm gonna put this up here and hope it works. Yes. Okay. So it's like an eye patch on mine. So
This is
so if you want to get in touch with Tina, which you do, if you have been here this long and don't know that you want to continue this conversation, if you don't know that you want to continue this conversation with Tina, you haven't been here long enough because this was an amazing talk, and I encourage everybody to go back to the replay and watch this and continue to comment. We'll continue to monitor that. Tina will continue to monitor that, and we can keep the conversation going. Take your phone out, put up that little what is that? Your camera, and hover
camera.
it over the QR code, and you can get all of Tina's contact information and find out what she's up to. And if you're struggling with your managers, your employees, or yourself, reach out to Tina. She's not going to coach you, but she might tell you what you got to do. She'll tell you how it is, which I think is way more valuable at times.
That is a fact, brother. That is a
Yes,
fact.
yes. So, and we hope that you can catch us next week as well when we're going to be talking with Michelle Fritsch. Michelle is, it's going to blow your mind that we're talking about thriving in retirement, and hopefully we'll not mention a 401k once. Because what we're going to be speaking about specifically is how to thrive in retirement, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And I think that that's so not talked about enough. And all I ever hear about is, how's your 401k looking? And that does not feel good for me as a self-employed individual. So
Agreed.
I start
I will be
being a
tuning in,
victim
brother.
and blaming everybody else for that. But but so Tina, what's next? What should we be looking forward to from you? And also
The
final thoughts.
the next book is called Fantastic Facilitation Fails. As always, I am late. And again, my publisher, I mentioned her earlier, has been on me like white on rice. And I'm like, I know. So that will be coming up in the last quarter of this year. Next year, there will be a book on choice right now called Yes, You Do Have a Choice. And now that I've said it out loud and shared it with you, David, of course I have to fulfill it. I can't be a
Yeah.
victim to it, right? And I think that would be my final thought, my friend, which is this: you can't unknow what we discuss. You always have a choice when you hit that roadblock, that obstacle, the tree falls on the house, whatever the thing is. Yes, acknowledge, validate, it's real. You have feelings around it. And then make the decision. What do you want your consequence to be? Do you want to swim around in victim mode until your fingers get pruny, or make a new choice so you can elevate up, out, and be successful? It's your call.
I love it. Then we should have ended on that. But when you were talking about that, I thought last week we gave homework. And I wondered if you had any homework, like one thing that somebody could practice today. I'm putting you so on the spot here in the last few seconds.
That's okay, and I'll get mad at you when we're offline, not in front of everyone. But here's what I would challenge everyone: everyone has right now something in their life for which they are victim to. I ended with a preposition. I'm sorry. So you've been putting off the thing, cleaning the basement, writing the book, putting your sneakers on and going for the walk. Whatever the thing is, you've come up with an excuse after excuse after excuse. All I want you to do with your homework is write the thing down on the piece of paper. I don't want you to do anything about it. I just want you to write the thing down on the piece of paper and keep it out on your desk for a month. That's it, because that one action is now it's right here and it's in your face and you can't look away from it. And then it's going to be I'm not going to ask you to shift your perspective or do anything. It's your choice if you want to, but acknowledge the thing. Whatever the thing is, your obstacle, roadblock, the tree that fell on your house, it's right there in front of you and you've been putting it off and you've been a victim to it. Just write down what it is, put it next to you. And when David and I come back the next time, I'll check in. We'll see how we're doing.
That sounds perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in today. We will catch you next week. And Tina has no choice. She has to come back. Well, she said everything's a choice, but hopefully she'll choose to come back. And we can continue this in a future episode. Awesome. Thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you.